We will start with the chanting, and you find the chanting in the small chanting book. And we do it in Pali as we usually do, so you can join us. That's a new one you have. Good. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Duttiyaṃpi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Duttiyaṃpi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Duttiyaṃpi saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Pānātipātā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Adinādāna vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Kāmesu miccācārā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Musāvādā vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Surāmeraya majjapamādātthāna vīramani sikkhapadang samadhiyāmi. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And I invite you to join me in a little bit of meditation. Being mindful on your posture, you will adjust, twist and turn, wiggle where necessary. You start mindfully breathing in and breathing out. You have some sense of awareness as you inhale and exhale. Your 6 sense doors are shut because your eyes are closed. You don't see forms, so that door is closed. So is your hearing, smelling, tasting, physical sensations and thinking. You do hear, you do smell, you do feel, but when you are slowly closing the doors, you do not let in external disturbances. to disturb your stillness. The goal is to stop every movement, including your breath. That will naturally happen when the body learns that you do not interfere with it. You breathe in, you breathe out, that movement will continue, but you will not worry about it with your thoughts. So that is the meaning of stopping the mind's movements. Above your neck, take a moment to relax your forehead by turning and making movements now. The back of your head, the top of your head, your facial expressions, below your chin, your neck, shoulders, elbows, your arms, your fingers and the palms, your chest, your back, your waist, your knees, shin bones, ankles, soles of your feet, and your toes. You are simply scanning your body from the top of your head down to the soles of your feet. Not disturbed by any external disturbances. Now you are going inwardly into a calming journey. By being mindful on your in-breath and the out-breath. dedicate any silence, calmness born from our silencing to the profound wisdom of the Buddha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so do you all have a copy of this? If you don't, you can grab one from one of the cushions. We are at number 59 of Middle Length Discourses of the Buddha. And in Middle Length Discourses of the Buddha you have 152 discourses. Of them, they group them into 50. So we have 3 sections, each consisting about 50 sutras. And when you go to the middle section of it, you find a collection of 10 teachings, sutras, and these 10 are named as Gahapati chapter on lay people. So they grouped the teachings directed at lay people into that those 10 teachings. But do you think that they had only 10 teachings related to lay people? No. Because when you go to gradual sayings or collections where you find about 7,000 teachings of the Buddha, you have so many teachings directed at lay people. But those monks who grouped the middle length discourses decided to put these 10 into that chapter on lay people. But in middle length discourses you find the most very interesting teachings, mostly related to your day-to-day life and your practice, a lot of wisdom, and engage in discussions, a lot of similes, things that you can relate to. We also have abhidhammic teachings, which means when we say abhi to something, it shows the profundity of something. So blue means nila. Abhinila means very blue, like bluish. And so dhamma means doctrine, teachings. So abhidhamma means the dhamma of dhamma, sort of like the nectar of it. You get it? So these teachings also fall into some classification kind of teachings. Someone arguing about, we have 2 kinds of this, but you say 3 kinds of this. So how do we resolve this conflict? So that happened here. And the question was then forwarded to the Buddha, and he says, yes, I have spoken about 2 kinds of this in one place, and 3 kinds of those in another place, but I may have also spoken about 5 kinds of, or 18 kinds of, or 36 kinds of, or 108 kinds of things. So he says, don't argue about numbers, just see the essence. And so that's what we get here. It's a beautiful teaching. When you practice meditation, you deal with feelings a lot. As I was cleaning the toilet just before coming here, I was brushing, putting a harpic into it, and I realized maybe I should say that our minds are like toilets. We like it when we keep it clean, but we don't like it when it's not clean. So the goal of meditation is to keep it clean. We like to keep our rooms clean, our house clean, just like that. Mind's nature is to mind on whatever comes at it, right? We cannot stop minding. People say never mind, but we start to mind about just that thing immediately after. We cannot never mind. That's our nature. So mind's nature is to cognize on something and get interested in things. So it's a bit of struggle when you first try to meditate. Mind is not so interested about your inhaling and exhaling. So then some monks start teaching you, okay, make it delightful. And you are like, how do you make it delightful? It's just your in-breath and out-breath. So you are struggling in the beginning. But delight comes, as I said in the meditation, delight comes when you slowly shut those doors, so you are less and less disturbed. And naturally there is pleasure born of this kind of seclusion from everybody else and seclusion from within, because you have sensory sense faculties always trying to give something interesting to you. Some thought comes and disturbs you, some sound, like you heard somebody coming and sitting and you were like, okay, is that a member I know, who's that person? These thoughts, are they disturbing? Not really. We are used to that. But what disturbs us is when we fall asleep, the thought to indulge in that sleepiness. Then we are definitely going to stop our meditation and go towards that pleasureful feeling. So the Buddha had to highlight about feelings in his teachings. There are feelings that people love about, there are feelings that you hate about, and there are neutral feelings. So you now see 3 kinds of feelings. But you also hear that bodily feelings and mental feelings. So that's just 2 kinds of feelings, bodily and mental. What you feel bodily is bodily feeling, but what is born from mental pain is mental feeling. Many of us in our life, in one episode of life, in 2 episodes or many episodes of our lives, we go through some mental pain. Loss, despair, not being able to be with loved people, and then we cannot stop it. We do want to, but sometimes we carry so much pain because of our mental feelings. And we try to go to a counselor and they don't listen to us. The moment you try to really enter to the discussion, they say, time is up. Your pain is doubled, that you even now hate the counselor on top of having your problem. So feelings can be disturbing when they arise. But are all feelings disturbing? No. Some feelings do support you. Some pleasures that are born as a result of your silence and stillness will lead you towards more calmness and stillness and deeper understandings and deeper wisdom. That's why in the beginning I highlighted about stopping every movement, which is hard in the beginning, but it becomes easier when you are less involved with things that come your way. Not everything, but things when they start to settle. So this is about Bahuvedanīya Sutta. Someone translated this as many experiences, not literally, not the literal translation, but it's okay to look at it that way. I forgot the name of the translator, but I think this one, when you look at Vedana means feelings. So Vedanīya is things that you feel. So Bahuvedanīya. Bahu here refers to many. Bahuputta can mean many sons. Like Bahuvida means many kinds. So, but this doesn't say Bahuvedanīya Sutta, but Bahuvedanīya Sutta. So Vedaniya, it's just like W sound, Ve. Bahuvedanīya Sutta. Many kinds of feeling. Okay. Do you want me to read or do you want to join me? And then we read together. Maybe that helps. Let's read as a group. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then the master builder, Panchakanga, went up to the Venerable Udayi, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, "Sir, how many feelings has the Buddha spoken of?" Master builder, the Buddha has spoken of 3 feelings, pleasant, painful, and neutral. The Buddha has spoken of these 3 feelings. When he said this, Panchakanga said to Udayi, "Sir, Udayi, the Buddha hasn't spoken of 3 feelings. He has spoken of 2 feelings, pleasant and painful." The Buddha said that neutral feeling is included as a peaceful and subtle kind of pleasure. For a second time, Udayi said to Panchakanga, "The Buddha hasn't spoken of 2 feelings. He has spoken of 3. For a second time, Panchakanga said to Udayi, "The Buddha hasn't spoken of 3 feelings. He has spoken of 2. And for a third time, Udayi said to Panchakanga, "The Buddha hasn't spoken of 2 feelings. He has spoken of 3. And for a third time, Panchakanga said to Udayi, "The Buddha hasn't spoken of 3 feelings. He has spoken of 2. But neither was able to persuade the other." So now you get into an argument. So Panchakanga is a builder. He worked for the king. He was the main carpenter. Here it says builder. Doesn't matter. He was someone. He was the main builder for the king Kusala. And he was a devotee of the Buddha. He had so much faith. He was listening to the teachings. And he listened so much that he now gets into arguments with monks. This will happen to you now. Hasn't happened yet, but you may come and say, "You said 2 of these, now you are saying 3 of these, and how do we understand this?" She can have a copy. We have extra copies here. Yes, please pass that on to her. So, Udayi is a monk. So, Venerable Udayi. So, Panchakanga had faith in the monk, so he went to Venerable Udayi, bowed and sat down. Think you got it, right? Nothing is difficult to understand there. But he is the one who is asking the question, like, how many feelings has the Buddha spoken of? And then this monk Udayi says 3, pleasant, painful and neutral. What is neutral feeling?
Neither pleasant nor painful.
Both are good answers, like no feeling or neither pleasant for, say it again please.
Neither pleasant nor painful.
Neither pleasant nor painful. That's how they usually translate it, but this is an Australian monk, I think, translating the way he likes it, Venerable Sujato. I know he lives in Australia, maybe he is Dutch, but somehow I love his translations. So I decided to use this translation. So back to our question. Give me an example of pleasant feeling.
Love.
Love, yeah? Another one? They always say love is painful though. Joy. Some songs that you listen to, right? And tasty food. Wow, this is good. I want more of it. Contentment, which is something good to have. The Buddha says, be content. Subhara, so you are easy to be fed. You don't demand things. Santutti is the word for content. Subhara is a different, like frugal. And painful one? Love again? Huh? Yeah. Love too, right? Anger is painful. You are angry because things are not going in your way. You want things to be this way, but this person doesn't seem to listen, so you are angry. But, Resentment. And tipping your toes. What's the word for that? Tripping or tipping? Tripping over something and it hurts, so that feeling. Like cutting your nails too far and it... I see your face. Yeah, what? Again?
You don't get what you want.
You don't get what you want. Yeah.
Getting what you don't want.
Exactly, getting what you don't want. Like this discussion. Can be painful. But what is neutral then?
Breathing.
Yeah. Sometimes breathing can be comfortable when your breath has stopped, now you try to breathe and it's now nice feeling.
Can be uncomfortable too.
Can be uncomfortable when...
Asthma.
Yeah, that's right. So, but when you don't feel any pain or pleasure, just like I lay my hand here, I can't tell whether this is painful or pleasant, but it's just a feeling. I know I felt something. But this is important when you go to absorption kind of meditations, where you go to the third absorption. There you are in a state where you don't feel any pleasure strongly, nor you feel any pain strongly. So, but you kind of like it as a good feeling. You worked hard to get there. But we will understand a little bit more when we go through this discussion, okay? So he argues of two feelings. Just he is also talking about pleasant and painful. So kind of like he had an answer, but he was trying to get it from the monk. He didn't get it. Now they start arguing. Then they went on 3 times. Shall we read again? Venerable Ananda heard this discussion between Udayi and Panchakanga. Then he went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and informed the Buddha of all they had discussed. When he had spoken, the Buddha said to him, Ananda, the explanation by the mendicant Udayi, which the master builder Panchakanga didn't agree with, was quite correct. But the explanation by Panchakanga, which Udayi didn't agree with, was also quite correct. In one explanation I have spoken of 2 feelings, in another explanation I have spoken of 3 feelings, or 5, 6, 18, 36, or 108 feelings. I have explained the teaching in all these different ways. This being so, you can expect that those who don't concede, approve, or agree with what has been well spoken with will argue, quarrel, and fight continually, wounding each other with barbed wounds. So concede here means not admitting, right? Not approving or agreeing with what has been well spoken. But I have a note for you here, because you might be wondering what is like 5 kinds of feeling, 6 kinds of feeling, 18 and 30. So for that, please go to the note section at the end. I have printed that for you. Very end. And read. We'll have to stop in different places as we try to understand it, and it's also in very small print. The photocopy machine started acting up, so I had to quite quickly somehow get this, so you have it. When you go to Sutta 59 section note 616, he says, this is Bhikkhu Bodhi's notes. The two kinds of feeling are bodily and mental feeling. But this is not related to what Panchakanga said, two kinds of feeling. He said pleasant and painful as two kinds of feeling. But here, so Buddha is, Buddha was having a different mind, it's like different set in his mind. So this is that set. Mental feeling and... Okay, let's start again. The two kinds of feeling are bodily and mental feeling. So those two. Or less commonly, the two mentioned by Panchakanga. So less commonly. Why do it say less commonly? The way Panchakanga says is not that common. Right? The way Venerable Udayi said is common. That they also highlight about the third, neutral feeling. The three kinds are the three mentioned by Udayan. In number 3, when you read the sutra according to Bhikkhu Bodhi's way of numbering, then you have number 3 there. The 5 kinds are the faculties of bodily pleasure, so that's number 1. Mental joy, number 2. Bodily pain, number 3. Mental grief, and number 5. Equanimity. So there is bodily pleasure and bodily joy, and then mental pain, bodily pain and mental grief. So pleasure and joy, pleasure and what? Pain are bodily, and sorry, I'm still trying to get it here.
So
I think what you said was right.
Mm-hmm.
the bodily, the pain, and the pleasure.
How many are mental here?
Yeah, mental
Grief
Joy and joy
and
equanimity.
pleasure. Pleasure is also mental, right? Oh, no. Joy and grief are mental, and pleasure and pain are bodily. That's right. And the 5th one is equanimity. But you might be wondering how this can be. You can have bodily pleasure, mental joy, and you can also have bodily pain and mental grief. Yeah, we do have those. I think that's kind of self-explanatory, right? It was just that I was trying to see something so big in that. The 6 kinds are the feelings born of contact through the 6 sense faculties. Do you know what the 6 sense faculties are? Do you have them? Some people act like they don't have one. Oh, they are missing one. Just list them for me, please.
It's eyes, ears, nose, mouth, body, and mind.
Good. Those ones. So those feelings that you feel through them. The 18 kinds are the 18 kinds of mental exploration. For example, exploring the 6 sense objects that are productive of joy, productive of grief, and productive of equanimity. So you have 6 sense objects, and 6 into 3 here becomes 18. 3 are joy, grief, and equanimity. So productive of here means some objects produce grief, some objects produce equanimity, some objects produce joy. What's the meaning of objects here? sounds, right? Things that you see, your forms. Some of them cause sadness, some arouse pleasure, some nothing. Like looking at this statue, it's an object that you see. What do you feel? Joy? Equanimity? Think equanimity, like you feel neutral. Huh?
It depends.
It depends on the mood of the person also. Some people really feel so much joy seeing. Like in Middle East, some Middle Eastern countries, there are so many Sri Lankans working, they cannot keep a Buddha statue because of their, the dominant religion and the rulers prevent, stop people from bringing any, items like that, any religious literature, scripture, anything. But for them, seeing a monk, if they happen to see one in the airport at least, there's joy. Some people have come running to us asking for a blessing thread, something like this. So we always have these with us when we travel. And one time this lady stopped her bus in Uppsala in the middle of the road. There were passengers. She got off the bus to get one, just one like this. She was the driver. She had so much joy. She just wanted this. She hasn't seen a monk in many years, so she wanted that. So the whole crowd was watching what was going on. So joy. Me as an object brought her joy. And then, so that's 18. The 36 kinds are the 36 positions of beings, which means the 6 kinds of joy, grief and equanimity, each based either on the household life or on a renunciation. So, okay, let's go back there. 36 kinds are the 36 positions of beings, the 6 kinds of joy, grief and equanimity. So 6 into 3 there, you get 18. And these 18 again, now, go into household life or renunciation. So renunciants have a different way of experiencing joy, grief and equanimity, and householders have different way of experiencing joy, grief and equanimity. So that way 18 into 2 is 36 there. Then you have the 108 kinds are the previous 36, considered as referring to the past, present and future. So 36 to the past, 36 to the present, 36 to the future. Does it come as 108? Yeah. So, okay. So we did stop there now. And in some occasions, Buddha would explain in those numbers. Where were we? Continually wounding each other with barbed words. So he's telling don't argue. Don't use that kind of language and argue with people on matters of numbers. And then let's read again. I have explained the teaching in all these different ways. This being so, you can expect that those who do admit, approve or agree with what has been well spoken will live in harmony, appreciating each other without quarreling, blending like milk and water, and regarding each other with kindly eyes. This tells you how to live in a harmonious way. This I remember very well. When someone asked me to speak about living in harmony, living in unity, this is what I teach them. I remember the Pali words, samagga, sammodamana, avivadamana, kirodaki bhuta, anyamanyang hi piyachakku hi passanta. That's the Pali for that. So they refer to samagga, without quarreling. Samagga, in harmony. sammodamana, appreciating each other, avivadamana, without quarreling, kirodaki bhuta, blending like milk and water, and regarding each other with kindly eyes, anyamanyang hi piyachakku hi passanta, piyachakku, kindly eyes. So this is really beautiful way to live, even in a household life. When you live with your children, live with your wife, you appreciate each other, you live in harmony, you live without quarreling, you are living like blending like milk and water, like inseparable. Well, they do separate milk and water with technology now, but in normal human capacities you are not able to. And regarding each other with kindly eyes, this is a place I love to look at. Like when someone look at you, you can tell whether they are angry or not. You don't have to listen to them. They don't have to speak. They can burn you with one look. So there are these 5 kinds of sensual stimulation. What 5? So here Buddha goes into his explanation. What 5? Sights known by the eye that are likable, desirable, agreeable, pleasant, sensual and arousing. And sounds known by the ear, again, likable, desirable, agreeable, pleasant, sensual and arousing. Same thing with smells, and again with tastes and touches. And then 5 kinds of sensual, these 5. What is missing here? Mental stuff. So what is thought of mentally? So the pleasure and happiness that arise. So now again a question, like he sometimes talks about 6 sense doors, and here he only mentions about 5, right? This is an example for that. But he's trying to teach something to us. With the question about numbers, he's beginning to explain about something. The pleasure and happiness that arise from these 5 kinds of sensual stimulation is called sensual pleasure. Okay? Any question in there? Anything that you disagree on? Okay. You have about 8 minutes to go. You will be able to finish. Then, because he just mentioned about highest pleasure one can experience, but he's going a little bit further. Can there be any higher pleasure? That's the question he's entertaining here. There are those who would say that this is the highest pleasure and happiness that sentient beings experience, but I don't grant them that. Why is that? Because there is another pleasure that is finer than that. And what is that pleasure? It is when a mendicant, why is the word mendicant? Someone who is begging for food, like monks, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, like the meditation we did just before starting, secluded from unskillful qualities. What is that? Hindrances. Feeling sleepy, angry, restless. These are unskillful qualities. Okay? There are 5 of those, including sensual pleasure, like indulging in things that arise in your mind, basically when you meditate, restlessness, doubts, anger, and what else did I miss? Sleepiness. These 5. So you are trying to seclude from them in meditation. Enters and remains in the first jhana, first absorption. This is what you experience when you stay not moving very much. And that absorption has the rapture and bliss born of seclusion. Why they say seclusion here? Because this spoke about quite secluded. Secluded from what? Secluded from seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, physical sensations and thinking. Very good seclusion. So this says that even in the middle of town, where you hear a lot of sounds, when you are not really listening to them, paying attention to them, you can still meditate. But people get irritated easily when they come to a meditation center like this and they hear somebody walking by with their keys dragging or their slippers tripping over something, or that they are breathing heavily. That's your anger. That you are trying to give too much attention and importance to something that is not important at all. Okay. And when you are secluded like that, enters and remain in the first absorption, which has, so in that absorption you have rapture and bliss born of your seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. Placing the mind where? Placing the mind in that seclusion, not into thinking. So keeping it connected, keep it connected to, oriented to, or forward looking to seclusion, to that absorption, to a place, to the place that you reach to. This is talking about first jhana experience. So here earlier the Buddha spoke about one type of pleasure about seeing stuff, indulging in them. But here the pleasure, this is a pleasure that is finer than that pleasure. So gradually he is going deeper. Are you ready for the next one? There are those who would say that this is the highest pleasure and happiness that sentient beings experience. But I don't grant them that. This is the Buddha saying. Why is that? Because there is another pleasure that is finer than that. And what is that pleasure? It is when, as the placing of the mind and keeping it connected are stilled, when you find stillness, a mendicant enters and remains in the second absorption, which has the rapture and bliss born of immersion. You are now immersed in it. Now in theatres they say you will have an immersing experience, right? If you go to Omni Theatre, you hear that. They are really proud of their sound system and they have a joke when they start. So, well, you haven't been there yet, so it's okay. With internal clarity, this is the theatre that you find in Boston. When you visit Boston, I encourage you to go to Mugar Omni Theatre. Beautiful experience with some documentary thing that you can watch for 30-35 minutes, but it's a nice experience. Just like a 4D movie experience. But this immersion is now you are in your meditation, right? You can't connect this with any external immersion, but you are immersed into your meditation. With internal clarity and confidence, you have now more stability and your mind is unified without placing the mind, and so you don't place the mind elsewhere, but you keep it connected to that experience. Which is like not thinking and examining anything, but happy there. I have a note there. Do you see that? Yeah. So now you go to the third one. The Buddha says there is another pleasure that is finer than that. And what is that pleasure? It is when the fading away of rapture. So the rapture naturally fades away. You don't force it to fade away, it fades away. A monk enters and remains in the third absorption. Absorbed, now deeper, where they meditate with equanimity, neutral, mindful and aware, personally experiencing the bliss of which the noble ones declare equanimous and mindful. One meditates in bliss. So how can equanimity be a bliss? You try to think that bliss is something you feel physically. You do feel something physically, but it's not super joyful, exciting, but it is something that arose as a result of you staying so stilled and silent. Any questions? Okay. Fourth, there is another pleasure that is finer than that. What is that pleasure? It is when giving up pleasure and pain and ending former happiness and sadness, things that are recorded in your mind. A monk enters and remains in the fourth absorption. Little further. With no pleasure or pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. This is called Upekha Sati Parisuddhi, pure equanimity and mindfulness. You are just mindful about whatever that state is when you are in there. No words to explain that level of absorption. But then the Buddha says there is another pleasure that is finer than that. And what is that pleasure? It is when a monk going totally beyond perceptions of form. So you're not seeing any form, you are not trying to imagine anything. With the ending of perceptions of impingement, like you don't imagine anything. Not focusing on perceptions of diversity, like different patterns that arise in mind. Aware that space is infinite. You are just trying to look at something empty, space. Enters and remains in the dimension of infinite space. Is that the end of all the pleasures? No. There is another pleasure that is finer than that. What is that pleasure? It is when a mendicant going totally beyond the dimension of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite. So now, how did you switch from infinite space to infinite consciousness? You became aware of your consciousness being aware of space. Because prior to that you were just aware of something empty, something like space. Not space as the space like sky, but this is your eyes are closed. Thoughtless state, like you don't think about anything. Right? Don't be scared about these. These are good states of meditation. Because you are mindful, you don't have to worry about anything. Only when you are like trying to imagine some beautiful women, then you get into trouble. They think, oh, I got into a jhana. That's the demon fooling you. Okay. There is another pleasure that is finer than that. And what is that pleasure? It's when a monk going totally beyond the dimension of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing at all, not even consciousness, enters and remains in the dimension of nothingness, not even consciousness. You don't grasp the experience as consciousness now, you are grasping the experience as nothingness. Then there is another pleasure that is finer than that. Like, do you really see this as pleasure? Not really, right? But according to Buddha's language, it's a pleasure. Why? Because you are not giving birth to suffering in these stages. And what is that pleasure? It is when a monk going totally beyond the dimension of nothingness enters and remains in the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception. Because you try to see something now. What is something? You are perceiving nothingness, but now you see it as a perception, and you try to stay a little bit beyond that, which is neither perception nor non-perception. So basically these are states you understand only when you try to meditate and go to these, try to touch these levels. So this is a pleasure finer than that. Then last part, shall we read it all together? There are those who would say that this is the highest pleasure and happiness that sentient beings experience. But I don't grant them that. Why is that? Because there is another pleasure that is finer than that. And what is that pleasure? It's when a mendicant, going totally beyond the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, enters and remains in the cessation of perception and feeling. This is a pleasure that is finer than that. It's possible that wanderers who follow Other paths might say the ascetic Gautama spoke of the cessation of perception and feeling, and he includes it in happiness. What's up with that? This is the Australian monk translating. This is not what you find in Pali, but he get it. He wants Australians to understand the teachings. When wanderers, let's read again. When wanderers who follow other paths say this, you should say to them, Reverence, when the Buddha describes what's included in happiness, he is not just referring to pleasant feeling. The realized one describes pleasure as included in happiness wherever it's found, in whatever context. So what is the meaning of that? So you go to these other, whoever is talking this way. What way were we talking about? The ascetic Gautama spoke of the cessation of perception and feeling. Although there is no perception, no feeling, that it was a cessation, nirodha, but he includes it in happiness. Usually, you shouldn't have any happiness in that state, right? Because it's a cessation experience, ceased, things have ceased. But they're like, what's up with that? They try to understand that state. But the Buddha says, tell them, when the Buddha talk about pleasure, he also includes the cessation experience that in that context as happiness. Why is it happiness? Because you have now ended arousing of any arising of suffering. In a stage like that, you don't perceive anything, you don't create a mental world. If you think logically, you are basically non-existing. But can any human being go there? They have and they can. As you now see, like slowly you started with seclusion experience and you went further and further. But you have to have a lot of gut feelings, not gut feelings, guts, like striving mind to make huge effort to continue doing this. In the Buddha's time, when they gave up everything and came to become a student of the Buddha, they only wanted this. So they will not stop until they experience these stages. So they were just, sometimes really wealthy people had all the pleasures, but they were like, okay, our parents had all these. They earned so much money. But we see so much wealth, not anyone who earned this. What's the use of adhering to, getting attached to this? And we have indulged enough, we have gone to parties and partied enough. We should strive for something better. So they are fulfilled in their lives. They don't have any unfulfilled desires. So they try to experience something higher. So this is the highest they would experience when they come to the Buddha. Ending of suffering is a pleasure because you don't suffer anymore. Your perception about the world will change with that experience. Any questions, comments, feedback? We are at 8:38 now. No comments, no questions? Yeah.
Few questions.
Yeah, he got few questions, very good.
So I was trying to understand the feelings that was described as, so 6 senses times 3, 2 mental feelings and the econometric
Yeah.
makes up the 18.
Mm-hmm.
So why the bodily feelings were left out there? So there are 2 more bodily feelings, right?
I'm not sure if I understand it.
So
how did you put into 18?
So 6
Joy.
senses.
Yeah, 6 senses. Yeah.
And so 2 mental feelings of grief and
Let me try to find that place. About 18, right? 18 kinds are the 18 kinds of mental exploration. So mental, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Exploring the six sense objects that are productive of joy, productive of grief, and productive of equanimity. Oh, that's a good question.
So pleasure and grief are the mental plus equanimity
Yeah.
are the three.
Mm-hmm.
So they are two mental and equanimity times the six senses.
Yeah.
Probability is the 18.
Yes.
But what about those two bodily feelings?
Well, you can add them.
The pleasure and pain. I was thinking actually, you can experience pleasure and pain in all the six senses.
Yeah.
So
Bodily too.
Yeah. So
and mentally too. Well, mentally.
Another 12. If you put those.
Then how many there will be? Like 18. Maybe there will be 18 plus 12. There will be 30.
And then you have two other dimensions where the what is that?
I feel like we are going back to the beginning about numbers, like
Household and the
Renunciation.
renunciance. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's two there, and then you have the past, present, and future.
Yeah. Oh, then you can go up to what was the number there? Like 108 and 20 plus, so 128.
And so
you can do that. He gives us the freedom to, because analytically, anybody who, when they are interested, they would go in. That's how Abhidhamma is born. That monks, they had so much fun playing with numbers. They went, yeah.
And
yeah.
the other question was, so then.
But did we try to find an answer for your first question?
Yeah. So
looks like we don't have an answer for that, but.
Well, I think the idea is that we really cannot separate the bodily feelings and the.
Can you speak louder so it's recorded?
We really cannot separate the bodily feelings and the sensual feelings, right? They are like.
Bodily or mental?
Right.
Yeah.
Or mental, they are not necessarily separated.
Right. I had that thought when he was representing the question, because whatever you experience is already mental when you really look at these senses.
You perceive with your body, but
Yeah.
eventually you.
I think where we get stuck is previous to that explanation we find something bodily, like 5 kinds, and then you get, you try to drag that bodily thing into the number 18, including mental.
Yeah, but the bodily feeling, of course, we feel it through the mental, but we feel mentally and we suffer that too. For instance, we lost somebody last year. We don't see him, but we remember that grief and we grieve.
It's mental.
That is just totally mental. And the same thing, like you thinking you're winning a lottery next week, you are enjoying it, but it's not there.
Yeah.
But you're enjoying it, so it's totally mental.
Those are mental, that's right. Those, imaginations.
No bodily experience, but we feel our body react to that and does everything, but there's no real bodily feeling, feeling there.
Can there be just bodily feelings and nothing mental? I don't think that is possible. Yeah. Being creepy?
Pain could be.
Pain could be, yeah, sorry.
I mean, it is really objective if the pain.
But
could
the
happen.
pain sometimes is felt only physically, right? But that physical pain is noticed from your mind's awareness. So it's also mental that way.
They're inseparable.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Yeah?
I think it's always they go together.
They go together. They are inseparable. But this is the thing, like when it depends, like some places the Buddha would go into 5 numbers, and then sometimes he will identify things as physical, and then sometimes he just completely let go of physical part and goes on to explain about things like grief that are felt mentally. Because in order for you to feel grief, you have had an experience, and now you are proliferating, multiplying thoughts. Yeah, back to you.
So.
Are we really helping you?
The other question was, so then there was the discussion about the jhanas.
Yeah.
So that was, I was kind of interpreting as the joy part of the mental feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
So happiness is kind of, so why then the pain part was not explored like that, you know? Because
Where? In which jhana?
pain means the grief part. So there's another component in mental, you know, there's joy and grief. So jhanas
In second jhana?
no, in general, I think the 5 jhanas are different levels of pleasure, I suppose.
Yeah. 4 jhanas in sutras, 5 in a commentarial tradition. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was kind of
Shall
understanding those 4 as different levels of pleasure.
Oh, the jhanas as pleasure?
Sensual, like sensual pleasures. Right?
I'm not sure.
Sensual
Can somebody answer this question? Can we take, like your first comment, like can we take jhanas as different kinds of pleasures? I don't think I will take it that way.
So
Because when you come to the third and fourth, you are in equanimity, where there cannot have any pleasure or pain.
But it's
So
using
My feeling is that when you go to different jhana, one step by step jhanas to get rid of pain and all those things and come to equanimity, and so it works like that.
Yeah, but equanimity is not pleasure, not pain. Equanimity is equanimity, it's neutral.
Equanimity is pleasure in you as long as you have joy and grief. If you until then equanimity is pleasure, of course, because you don't have the
Equanimity is pleasure because you don't suffer there.
That's right. So then the equanimity is pleasure when you have the grief.
It depends on the. It's not that pleasure that we are generally talking about here. That's a perspective change. Yeah.
right. So the way it is presented here is that, you know, each jhana there's a
Pleasure in it. Yeah, yeah.
describing a pleasure.
Oh, if
There's
you
a
are,
higher
yeah,
level of pleasure.
that's right. That's right.
But the pleasures are here are different dimensions of joy. If I, interpret it in that way.
If you interpret the way that is presented in this sutra, yes, yes.
So then I was wondering, okay, so the joy part of the mental pleasure has been kind of described into different
Levels.
levels of
it's
pleasure. So why the grief part was not explored in the same way? Because that's another component of the mental pleasure, right?
Grief is no mental pleasure. Grief is mental pain.
Yeah, it's a mental component of a feeling.
It's a mental feeling, that's
Yeah.
right. In third jhana, you go to that explanation. And I think I may have numbered them in your. So when you go there, where they meditate with equanimity, mindful and aware, personally experiencing the bliss of which the noble ones declare, equanimous and mindful. And then you are switching to the fourth one. There is another pleasure, and what is that pleasure? It is when giving up pleasure and pain. So so between third and fourth ones, there is an activity. You are giving up any pleasure and pain, and you are like purely staying absorbed into the mindfulness of equanimity, balance and balance and balance. Does that answer your question? Because beyond that, you don't find any word described as pleasure. You have infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception.
I think what I was trying to understand was the one mental feeling was kind of described into different levels. That's the joy part of the mental pleasure, the mental feeling, but the grief part of the mental feeling is not quite discussed into that
Oh,
level.
grief is already here when they say pain.
Yeah, but so jhanas give
Jhanic explanations.
different dimensions
Yeah.
That's that mental feeling, right?
Yeah.
The joy feeling.
Yeah.
But what I was wondering was why the grief mental component was not explored in the same way.
At the same level
Yeah.
as joy.
Yes.
I think the idea is like, it's as you advance, the painful, no present feelings are considered, right? Just like
Non-pleasant.
feels, right? Neither of those things. And I think if someone is trying to explain this to a lay person, people don't want to feel more grief or more pain, right? So we need to make it sound better as you advance,
Yeah.
at least. Like
Well, thank you for that. But you are saying, I'm not totally sure if I get the question in the first place. But before we enter even the first jhana, when you are preparing for it, what happens is quite secluded from so many things. So there is previous disappear. Your grief does not play any role in jhanas. When you are in grief, you are not really going to succeed in jhanas. Mindfulness does help to be free from that grief. Can you think of it that way then? So if you were having any grief, you are not talking about jhanas at all. You are still in your sensual experiences. Can anyone else add anything to that? Or am I seeing the question differently?
So is it like after you stop the pain, it's the different levels of happiness? Each
It's understandable. If you have grief, you are not in jhana, basically.
Yeah.
You're below, lower than
Yeah,
that.
you are in a lower place.
Yeah,
Because grief is holding you from going to jhanas.
exactly.
But can you naturally, like you say, okay, now I'm switching, now I'm, pushing the button and I stop grief. It doesn't happen too. You need some work done, and then grief fades away. As a result, your mind is now ready to experience further seclusion, and you go beyond.
Right. So that's exactly what I was thinking, because the pleasure and grief are the opposite sides of feelings. So if you go into the grief level, how do you come into the pleasure? If you see the
So so if you are taking grief as the opposite of pleasure,
so if the jhanas are higher level of pleasures,
Mhm.
in sense like you are
oh right,
still
now I think I get the question
so
now.
then if you are in a grief state,
Yeah.
you want to go to the positive side, but
Mhm.
you need to kind of I was wondering, was there any analytical way that has been done in the grief,
No.
like did it in the jhana, in
No.
the happiness side?
No. Why?
That's a question.
It's because obvious, like people or everybody wants happiness.
right.
But to get into happiness, don't you think like, okay,
No.
we understand we are in the grief scale.
Do we even have a grief scale?
Oh, people get grief.
Experience grief, right?
Yeah.
My feeling is that they are talking about the pleasure, not worldly pleasure. It's a jhanic pleasure. It's a different than worldly pleasure.
Yeah.
Jhanic pleasure plus pleasure of ending suffering, pleasure of not having anything to worry about.
I think here suffering means, definition of suffering here is both pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Suffering is like perception of feeling.
Yeah.
So,
Everything is suffering here.
Right. Everything is suffering here.
Yeah.
At least that's what it looks like.
Yes. Good. Now I got the question.
Yeah.
Although I don't really have a solid answer to that.
Worldly
Well,
pleasure.
nobody, not even Buddha looked at it that way, but I think you are enlightened in a different way.
Or theologists too.
I don't know what I'm majoring.
Anything else? Okay, let's transfer merits. We can continue the conversation privately, but people need to go home. That's the last page. In the improved version, you will have page numbers. So we can tell page numbers. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.